My name is Martha Greer, 64 years old, and I've lived in Maplewood, Missouri, my whole life. Most mornings I walk around Lake Maplewood to clear my mind, but that morning was different. The air was heavy, the sky bruised with early spring clouds, and the wind smelled like rain and rust. I remember clutching my coat tighter when I saw a dark SUV parked by the water. At first, I thought it was some teenager dumping trash, but then I saw her, my daughter-in-law, Elena. She stood there with her long hair whipping in the wind, both hands gripping a suitcase. My heart froze. It had only been 2 months since my son Jake died in that terrible car crash, and I hadn't seen her since the funeral. What was she doing here? In the middle of nowhere, with a suitcase. I called out her name, but she didn't turn. She dragged the suitcase to the edge, looked around like she was making sure no one else was there, and shoved it into the lake. The splash echoed across the water, sharp and hollow. My feet started moving before my mind could catch up. "Elena!" I shouted. She spun around, startled, eyes wide like a trapped animal. For a second, we just stared at each other. Then she bolted, ran straight to the SUV, slammed the door, and sped off, gravel spraying behind her. I didn't think. I kicked off my shoes and waded into the freezing water. The suitcase was already sinking, bubbles breaking the surface. My fingers went numb as I grabbed the handle and dragged it toward shore. The zipper was stuck. I tore it open with trembling hands. Inside, beneath a soaked blanket, was something I'll never unsee. A baby, tiny, bluish, gasping for air. For a moment, the world went silent except for the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I scooped the baby up, pressing him against my chest. He was still warm. His fingers twitched against my skin, searching for life. "Oh, dear God," I whispered, my throat burning. I laid him on the ground, tilted his head back the way I remembered from an old CPR class, and breathed into his tiny mouth. Once, twice. Then he coughed, a thin cry bursting out like music from another world. Tears blurred my vision. I wrapped him in my coat and grabbed my phone. My fingers shook as I dialed 911. When the operator asked what happened, my voice cracked. "I think my daughter-in-law just tried to kill someone," I said. There was a pause. "Who, ma'am?" I looked down at the baby's face, still crying softly against me. "My grandson," I whispered. "She tried to kill my grandson." And that was the moment everything I thought I knew about my family and about love began to shatter. The sirens came before I could feel my own hands again. Paramedics rushed down the slope, their boots splashing through the mud, their voices calm and clipped. I stood there shivering, clutching the baby while one of them wrapped a thermal blanket around both of us. They slid him into a tiny incubator, and I remember one of the EMTs saying, "He's alive. Weak, but alive." I didn't realize I was crying until a medic gently guided me toward the ambulance. I couldn't stop shaking. When the doors closed, the lake disappeared behind us, swallowed by fog. All I could see was the faint reflection of my own face in the window, old, scared, and furious. At St. Vincent's Medical Center, the hallways smelled like bleach and rain. A nurse asked my name, my relationship to the infant. My mouth moved on its own. "I'm his grandmother." The words didn't even feel real, but when I said them, something inside me settled, like a vow I didn't know I'd made. They kept the baby in the NICU, a small glass box humming with machines. His chest rose and fell under a nest of wires and tape. I pressed my palm against the glass. "Hang in there, little one," I whispered. Detective Harris showed up that afternoon, a tall man in his 50s with a calm voice that could have belonged to a priest. He asked me to tell him everything, what I saw, what I heard, what Elena did. When I finished, He frowned and flipped through his notebook. So, Mrs. Greer, your daughter-in-law hasn't been in touch since your son's funeral? No? She stopped answering my calls. And you're certain she was the one you saw? I'd stake my soul on it, I said. They found her SUV abandoned 2 towns over. No sign of her, just a single suitcase tag floating in the back seat with her initials on it. That night, I sat alone in the waiting room, a styrofoam cup of coffee cooling in my hand. The world outside was dark, snow starting to fall in lazy flakes. I could still hear the baby's thin cries echoing from behind the glass. I didn't even know his name. The next morning, the doctor came to see me. He's stable, she said, smiling faintly. He's a strong little guy. Does he have a name? I asked. Not on record. Do you want to choose one for now? I thought of Jake, how he used to fix old radios and say every broken thing could sing again if you listened hard enough. Nathan, I said softly. It means gift. That name stuck. A few days later, Detective Harris came back, this time with papers in hand. We ran a DNA test. Mrs. Greer, the baby is indeed your grandson. My knees nearly gave out. I sank into the chair, clutching the file he handed me. Inside was a photo of Jake and Elena, taken not long before his accident. He looked happy. She looked like a stranger wearing a smile. Harris kept his tone gentle. We're also reopening your son's case. His brakes were tampered with. Not an accident. My breath caught. You think Elena? He nodded. It's possible. But we need evidence. I sat there, stunned, the room shrinking around me. For 2 months, I'd been grieving a tragedy. Now it felt like I'd been living inside a lie. That night, I went home for the first time since the rescue. The house was quiet, full of ghosts. Jake's old toolbox sat by the back door where he'd left it. On the kitchen table, still folded neatly, was the baby blanket I'd knitted when Elena first told us she was pregnant. She'd laughed and said she didn't like the color. I picked it up, running my fingers over the stitches. You'll need this soon, little one, I whispered. The phone rang. It was Child Protective Services. A woman with a clipped, bureaucratic tone told me they were placing Nathan under temporary guardianship until a custody hearing could determine his future. I'm his family, I said. I'll take him. Mrs. Greer, with your age and income level, we'll need to conduct an evaluation. I don't care what it takes, I said. I'm not letting him end up in some foster system while his mother runs free. After I hung up, I walked to Jake's old room. The smell of his aftershave still lingered. On his nightstand sat his laptop, the one Elena had refused to give back after his death. I remembered finding it in the closet weeks earlier, tucked behind a box of baby clothes. I plugged it in. The password screen appeared. I tried Jake's birthday. It worked. The desktop was cluttered with blueprints, invoices, and a folder named Insurance. Inside, I found a scanned copy of his life insurance policy, dated 2 weeks before the crash. The beneficiary wasn't Elena. It was future child, if applicable. My hands started to tremble again. Jake had changed everything for his unborn baby. Elena must have known. In that moment, I stopped being a grieving mother and became something else entirely. I became a woman on a mission. When I closed the laptop, I saw Jake's reflection in the dark window, calm, steady, waiting. Don't worry, I murmured. I'll protect him. Both of you. Outside, the snow kept falling, coating the world in white. It looked peaceful, but I knew peace wouldn't last long, because somewhere out there, Elena was still free, and I had just found the first thread of her web. Detective Harris came by again 2 days later. He looked tired, as if the case had started to eat at him too. We sat at my kitchen table, the same one where Jake used to help me do crossword puzzles when he was a boy. Harris laid out a few photographs, Jake's car after the crash, the brake lines, a close-up of a tiny cut in the tubing. "That's where it was sliced," he said quietly. "Clean cut. Whoever did this knew what they were doing." I stared at the photo, my stomach twisting. "You think she paid someone?" "Maybe," he said. "We've traced a few cash withdrawals from a joint account right before the accident, around $10,000. Then, 2 days after your son's death, another 15 went to a man named Philip Ross, a lawyer she's been in contact with." I'd heard that name before. Jake had mentioned him once in passing, calling him the guy Elena's boss keeps around for insurance claims. When Harris left, I couldn't sit still. I opened Jake's laptop again, digging deeper. There were messages, half-finished emails he'd drafted but never sent. One of them stopped me cold. "Elena, if you go through with this, I'm changing the policy. I won't let greed ruin us." My throat tightened. I could almost hear his voice in those words, calm, disappointed, final. That night, I printed everything, the policy, the email drafts, even screenshots of her bank statements Harris had shown me. I spread them across my kitchen table like puzzle pieces. Every line pointed to the same thing. Elena didn't just lose her husband. She made sure she did. When I looked up from the papers, I caught sight of Nathan's baby blanket on the couch, folded neatly. The sight of it steadied me. I'd lost Jake, but that boy upstairs sleeping in the nursery, he was the reason to keep going. The next morning, I met Harris again, this time at the station. He told me they were issuing a warrant for Philip Ross's financial records. If we can tie him to the transfer, we've got conspiracy to commit murder. "Can I help?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "You already are, ma'am. Just keep yourself safe." But I didn't feel safe. That night, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Martha." The voice was low, shaking slightly. It was Elena. For a heartbeat, I couldn't breathe. "Where are you?" I demanded. "Someplace you can't find me." Her tone was cold now, stripped of all pretense. "You think you can take my son away? He's mine." "Yours! You left him to drown," I shouted, my voice cracking. She laughed, a hollow sound that made my skin crawl. "You don't understand. You're not part of this. Just give me what's mine, and you'll never see me again." "What are you talking about?" "Jake's money," she hissed. $500,000. I know you have the paperwork." My blood ran cold. "You killed him for that money, didn't you?" She hung up. I stood there, phone still in my hand, shaking. It wasn't just about the baby anymore. It was about Jake's life, about everything Elena had stolen from us. The next day, I drove to Jake's old office, hoping to find someone who knew more about Philip Ross. The receptionist looked nervous when I mentioned his name. "Philip hasn't been in for weeks," she said. But there was. Someone who used to come see him, a woman with dark hair, always wore sunglasses. "Elena," I whispered. As I turned to leave, the receptionist lowered her voice. "I overheard them once. They were talking about an accident payout. Something about the timing being perfect. That was enough for me. I went home and pulled out Jake's old camera from the drawer. I knew what I had to do. If the police couldn't find Elena, maybe I could lure her out. I called Harris and told him my plan. She'll reach out again. She wants the documents. I'll tell her I'll bring them to wherever she chooses." He didn't like it, but he agreed to back me up. "You'll wear a wire," he said. "We'll be close." That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house made me think of footsteps. Every gust of wind sounded like tires crunching on gravel. I kept replaying the lake in my mind, the splash, the scream of silence after. By morning, I felt older than I ever had before. At sunrise, I went to the hospital to see Nathan before the meeting. He was sleeping, his tiny chest rising and falling with the rhythm of the monitor. I touched the glass gently. "You hold on, little one. Grandma's got work to do." A nurse smiled as she walked by. "He's a fighter." "So was his father," I said. On my way out, I saw my reflection in the window again. Same coat, same eyes, but something different behind them. Resolve, back home. I set the stage, printed copies of the insurance policy, placed them in a manila envelope, and waited for Elena's next call. It didn't take long. "You still have the papers?" she asked. "Yes," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Good. Meet me tomorrow night. Old warehouse off Highway 62. Come alone." When the line went dead, I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone, feeling the weight of what was coming. Outside, the world was silent again, the kind of silence that comes before a storm. I poured myself a cup of coffee and turned off the lights. In the darkness, I whispered, "Tomorrow, Jake. Tomorrow we finish this." The next 24 hours felt like walking through fog. Every sound, every movement carried weight. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat by the window with the manila envelope on my lap and the baby monitor beside me, listening to Nathan's soft breathing through the static. The world outside was black, the kind of darkness that feels alive. By morning, I'd made up my mind. If Elena wanted to meet, I'd go. Not because I was brave, but because I was done being afraid. When night came, the wind shifted, clouds hung low, swollen with rain. I parked my car a block from the old freight warehouse on Highway 62, just as Detective Harris had instructed. The warehouse loomed ahead, an old skeleton of steel and brick, its windows cracked like shattered glass eyes. Harris's voice came through my earpiece. "Remember, we're right outside. Just keep her talking." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. My pulse thrummed in my neck as I stepped into the echoing dark. My flashlight sliced through dust and silence. "Elena?" My voice trembled once before I steadied it. Footsteps echoed back, soft at first, then closer. She stepped out from behind a column, pale under the flickering light. Her hair was tangled, her coat buttoned wrong. She looked thinner, haunted, but her eyes were sharp, burning with defiance. "You came alone," she said. "As you asked," I replied. "I brought what you wanted." I held up the envelope slightly, careful not to move too fast. She smirked. "Smart woman. Where's my son?" "He's safe," I said. "He's being cared for. You don't need to worry about him." Her face twisted. "Don't you tell me not to worry. You stole him from me." I felt something rise inside me. Anger, grief, maybe both. "You tried to drown him. Elena, you left him to die." Her laugh was hollow. "You think you're better than me? You think your precious Jake was perfect? He was leaving me. He changed the policy, left everything to that child. Philip told me what he did. After everything I sacrificed, he was going to throw me away." "You call murder a sacrifice?" I said quietly. She took a step closer. "You don't understand. You've never been the one left behind. You've never had someone look at you and see nothing." "Believe me," I whispered. "I know exactly how that feels." For a moment, something flickered in her eyes, maybe guilt, maybe just exhaustion. Then her jaw tightened. "Give me the documents, Martha, or I'll take them off your corpse." Her hand moved, pulling a small silver gun from her pocket. My breath hitched, but I kept my gaze steady. "You don't have to do this," I said softly. "It's over. The police know. They have Philip. They have the records." She hesitated, Half a second, maybe less, but it was enough to see the fear under her fury. "You're lying." "No," I said. "I wish I were." Something inside her broke then. Her voice cracked. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. Philip said we'd be gone before anyone found out. He said—" Sirens cut through the night. The sound froze us both. Elena spun toward the doorway, gun raised. "You set me up," she screamed. "Please, put it down," I said, holding out my hands. "Don't make this worse." Her eyes darted wildly, searching for escape. The gun trembled. "You think I'm going to prison? I'd rather die first." "Then don't make that choice," I pleaded. "Do it for him. For Nathan." The name hit her like a slap. Her hand shook harder, tears cutting down her face. Then, a heartbeat later, the gun went off. The sound was deafening. For a second, I didn't even feel the pain, just the force, the light, and the way the world seemed to tilt. Then warmth spread across my shoulder, sharp and burning. I hit the ground. Voices shouted from outside, Harris yelling commands, the crash of boots, the metallic echo of a gun clattering to the floor. Drop it now." I heard a scream, a scuffle, then silence. When I opened my eyes, Harris was beside me, pressing a hand to my wound. "You're okay, Mrs. Greer. Stay with me." My vision blurred. "Is she—" He nodded grimly. "We've got her. She confessed everything. It's all on tape." Relief hit me so hard I almost sobbed. "Philip?" "In custody." The money trail did him in. I let out a weak laugh, half pain, half triumph. "Good." They carried me out on a stretcher. The rain had started again, soft at first, then steady, washing the blood from my hand. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I saw Elena through the window of a patrol car. She wasn't screaming anymore. Her face was blank, drained of hate, of anything human. At the hospital, the lights were warm, the air sharp with antiseptic. The nurses moved quickly, voices calm, practiced. I drifted in and out as they stitched me up. When I woke the next morning, the pain was dull, and a vase of wildflowers sat beside my bed. Detective Harris came in, coffee in one hand, the same weary kindness in his eyes. "You did good," he said. "I almost didn't make it." He smiled faintly. "Almost doesn't count." I looked out the window. The rain had stopped. The world outside was quiet, washed clean for the first time in months. I felt something close to peace. "Can I see him?" I asked. He nodded. "He's waiting for you." They wheeled me down the hall to the NICU. Nathan was there, sitting up in his crib, stronger now, a little patch of sunlight touching his cheek. When the nurse placed him in my arms, he blinked up at me and smiled. Jake's smile. Soft and sure. I kissed his forehead, tears slipping down my face. "It's over, sweetheart. You're safe now." His tiny hand reached up, resting against the bandage on my shoulder, and I realized that safety wasn't something we found. It was something we fought for. I held him tighter, feeling his heartbeat against mine, and whispered, "We made it." Outside, the last of the clouds broke apart, and the morning light filled the room. 5 years later, the lake looks different. The water no longer feels like a grave. It shimmers, alive, almost kind. Nathan loves coming here. He runs ahead of me on the trail, his laughter rolling through the trees like a song I thought I'd forgotten. Sometimes he stops and tosses pebbles into the water, watching the ripples spread. "Do you think Daddy can see me from up there?" he asks. I always smile. "I think he's right here, sweetheart. Every time the wind moves the water, that's him saying he's proud." He nods, serious for a moment, then bursts into another laugh. The sound is pure sunlight. People in town still talk about what happened. Some call me brave. I don't feel brave. I just did what a mother and a grandmother had to do. Justice wasn't about revenge. It was about giving Nathan a life free from fear. Elena is still in prison. I haven't written to her, though sometimes I think about it. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't a gift you give the guilty. It's something you give yourself when the anger starts to fade, every evening after Nathan's asleep. I sit on the porch with a cup of tea. The old baby blanket, faded and frayed, lies over my knees. The crickets hum, the stars blink awake, and I listen to the quiet rhythm of our little house breathing. The lake glows under the moonlight, calm and steady. It isn't cold anymore. It's home. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.